That talk about trans people, intersex people that used to be referred to as hermaphrodites, which is a phrase that we don't prefer anymore. We find it to be very triggering and offensive because of the way that it's been used historically.
Okay, but it
kind
was
of like the N-word, right?
Used,
kind of like the N-word, right? Like there's a certain
well,
historical
not kind of like
context.
the N-word. Wasn't hermaphrodite a medical term?
Welcome to another installment of There Are Only Two Genders, Change My Mind. Unedited conversations with people on the street. Usually we do this on campus, but during summer break, that's kind of hard to do. So before we start, because this is a long one, I wanted to show you how this conversation ends up with our second person who claimed to be intersex and got a little hostile. And the reason for this is because of the length of these conversations. If you ever feel like we're talking around in circles or getting off in the details, you'll see that they come back later on and they matter. That's key when having a conversation and finding common ground. So this is about the end point.
Well, no. The biological makeup of a brain is not societal. The biological makeup of a brain is biological.
But what I'm saying is right. So what I'm saying, the brain that you call the male brain or the female brain, with what you're saying.
You did, not me.
I'm saying is closer to that brain that you are referring to as a male brain.
You referred to it that way. So I want to make sure I'm correct that you believe there is a male brain generally and a female brain generally. I'm not going to say yes to you when I'm explaining my answer, when I'm giving you my answer.
Okay. My answer is what you are referring to as a male brain is more...
But I didn't. You did. That's why it's important. You brought this up, male brain and female brain. I'm trying to understand what you brought up. I didn't bring up male brain, female brain.
So that context matters because we are going to rewind all the way to the beginning, where you can see that intersex girl works for this person who approached me, transgender male to female Danielle Skidmore, actually running for Austin City Council in District 9.
How are you? Would you like to change my mind?
I'll try.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
I was going to the post office and saw your table and I've heard about your show, so I thought...
Oh, great, thank you very much.
Yeah, right?
Appreciate it.
Cool.
What's your name?
Danielle.
Danielle, absolutely. So, Stephen, and if you're familiar at all with the show, this is just where we engage in civil discussion, dialogue on issues that are usually pretty controversial. They result in talking points with a lot of people, and you don't get to see full-length conversations. So, I believe there are two genders.
Okay.
You're welcome to change my mind.
I think human biology is really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I think that gender identity is real and intrinsic, and I don't think there's a binary. I don't think there's a binary for anything.
Can I ask you, are you transgender?
I am, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm kind of sweaty this morning.
That's okay. No,
and it's funny. I was walking down the street and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a sign, right, to have this conversation.
So, what do you believe is wrong, I guess, about my statement? You said
there's two genders?
Yeah.
I think I've come to realize, so I'm trans, right?
Yeah.
And that why we are the way we are, like what makes our core humanity, right, is beautifully complicated. So like my son's got a genetic disorder, right? He's missing an enzyme that lets him metabolize 2 amino acids, right? Why that is, we have no idea. Like it was a biological variation, it's true, right? It doesn't diminish his humanity,
right?
But it is fundamentally different. Now, like why I'm trans, to be honest with you, I don't know, right? Now it took me 37 years to stop fighting what I knew to be true from the earliest ages, like as a child, to work my way through the social stigma of my reality, which was that I know I'm different. I don't understand why I am. I don't know why I would, go and hide in the bathroom and wear my sister's clothes, right? Like when I was 7, right? Like, yet it all got wrapped into the expectations of society.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm just kind of unwrapping this carefully. You said the truth of your reality.
Yeah.
That you are a woman.
A transgender woman. Yeah.
Okay. How do you know that's the truth?
How do I know that it's true?
Yeah.
How do you know that you're a heterosexual, I presume, heterosexual cisgender man?
Okay.
It's presumptuous of me, right?
No, well, that's okay. That was presumptuous, but
right.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I think this is obviously a big component of the LGBTQAI community that preferences, sexuality preferences. As far as I'm attracted to women, that's a preference, obviously. So it's innate. I was born, I like women, and biologically I was born a male because I have a penis and the hormonal profile and chromosomes of a male. So that's how I know that it's true to state that I'm a male.
That you're the male because you're a male because like you're XY.
I didn't simplify it to XY, a multitude of factors. I have a male brain, I have a male body, everything from bone density to my hormonal profile to, yes, my penis. All of these things pretty clearly would file me in the cabinet under male, biologically.
Like in the spectrum of biological variation, you're in that big collection of people that have all of those things in alignment.
Yeah.
There are people, right, like 2/3 of 1% is the best number now, right? That are transgender, based on what we know.
Sure.
Which in Texas is like 130,000 adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who, for reasons that are still unknown, don't have all of those biological components that you described, don't align as cleanly as yours do.
Okay. Well, you say, unknown. Again, this goes back to, you said your truth that you are a female.
Yeah.
You asked me, why am I a male? I hope that I've answered it as clearly as I can.
Right.
So I would return that same question to you, because I think we need to start with the presupposition. There needs to be the same amount of validity to our arguments as far as us rationalizing them. You said the truth that you are a female.
Yeah.
You were born a male. How do you know that's the truth?
I was born a transgender woman.
Okay, and how do you know that's the truth?
How do I know that's the truth? Like, in what biological context? Is it validated? Is that the question?
Yeah, how do you know that you're not simply a man who believes he's a woman?
How do you, why are you, if you're heterosexual, why are you attracted to women?
Well, there's a lot of biological mechanisms in there, namely to procreate since the beginning of civilization.
If somebody is attracted, same-sex attracted, a gay man, do you believe that that's not their intrinsic reality?
Well, again, it's a sexual preference, and I think that's very important because the sexual preference is different from biology, right? And this is what I find also pretty interesting to me is right now they're teaching that, obviously you're born gay, but gender is a choice, and that to me I just don't agree with. So, how do you know? You say that you're a transgender. You were born a transgender woman, right?
Yeah.
But I would assume on your birth certificate it said male.
Right.
So at some point you made the decision to live the way that you live right now, correct?
At some point I made the decision, it was almost a decade ago, to unpack all of the guilt and shame I felt for being different, right? And at some point I made the decision to unpeel guilt and shame, right? About my truth, and to start trying to reconcile it with the rest of my life, and to reconcile it with a society that is still pretty hostile to people who are different. So it was a question of no longer fighting against myself.
Yeah.
So, and then even after I did that, I spent another 6 years desperately trying to not accept that. I accepted the truth, and I'm like, how do I reconcile with that? I'm an engineer, a civil engineer. I'm a parent of a special needs child, right? Like, how can I be who I knew I am and still function in society? So it took me years, and eventually I realized that I don't have a choice. Like, we look at the news this morning, right? And with Tony Bourdain, taking his life, right?
Right.
So 40% of transgender people attempt suicide.
Can I pause you right there really quickly? Just first off, I hope that I haven't been hostile. I know you talked about
haven't been hostile at all. No, this is a great
Okay, good.
We're good.
Because I know we disagree, but I certainly don't want to be disrespectful to you personally, even if I disagree with you.
I don't find that we disagree, actually.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that way, because the last thing I want is for you to feel as though you've been sat down and it's been a sandbagging. And you've brought up, Anthony Bourdain. You brought up the suicide rate. I think that's very important. It's about 41%. It doesn't get better after hormone replacement therapy, or even actually doing the full sex reassignment surgery.
So here we are, right? I will disagree with you.
Okay.
I think the data shows that when people are able to live their lives as themselves and are accepted in their community, in their social networks, that's their friends and their family, professionally, in their city, when they're not stigmatized, when they don't lose their job, when they don't lose their housing, when they aren't ostracized or demonized, right? Like our state legislature spent the last spring and then called a special session essentially to demonize my existence based on somebody's, I don't honestly, sincerely held religious belief. I'm not sure why, but to basically challenge my very validity as a human being, right? Then, yeah, people can be frustrated and scared and terrified and hopeless and then kill themselves. But in my community, when people are able to live their lives and are accepted and able to, aren't discriminated, right? Then their suicide rates fall dramatically. The single best thing you can do for somebody who's LGBTQ of any sort, but especially trans, is recognize their truth and accept their humanity.
Well, I would disagree with you there. And first off, I think you made a couple. Yeah, and let me explain why. You made a couple of presumptions. Maybe they're not trying to demonize your very existence. Maybe they just disagree with you, and maybe it doesn't come from a Christian perspective. Maybe it comes from a scientific one. Maybe it comes from a perspective of a medical perspective. For example, at Johns Hopkins.
No, that's okay.
I think we're okay having a conversation, you and I, right now, right?
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. Thank you, though. And the suicide rate statistically, anecdotally, I'm glad to hear that your group of friends do better. Because one thing, I definitely don't want people attempting suicide in a 41%.
It's not just my friends. I mean, the data from the National Center for Trans Equality, the Equality Texas, HRC, it's not like my anecdotal sort of group of friends. The scientific data shows that when people are not discriminated against and when transgender individuals are able to live their life, whether they, just transition socially or have hormone replacement therapy or have surgery, whatever, when people are able to live their lives, their mental health is better.
Well, statistically, it's inaccurate. Statistically, the suicide rate doesn't really improve after
I'm
sex reassignment therapy.
But that, so maybe that's something we can follow up on.
Okay, let's assume it's comparable. Let's assume it's slightly lower. Let's go with that. I've seen the studies that you're talking about, and it might be slightly lower. It's not dramatically lower. But I think this is predicated on the idea, and I don't think it's an ill-founded idea, that because of discrimination, because of societal pressure, because of feeling like an outsider, people have more mental health issues. People are more prone to depression. People are more likely to attempt suicide if they feel ostracized and isolated, right?
Yeah, if they're treated as less than human.
I would agree. But the fact is, minorities generally commit suicide or attempt it in far fewer numbers. For example, white males are 2 times more likely than black men. The transgender attempted suicide rate is higher than American slaves or Jews in concentration camps. Are we to believe that they've been treated more poorly in modern America than American slaves or Jews in Auschwitz?
You're asking me to compare transgender individuals to
the statistical reality that nowhere else do you find that suicide rate outside of some serious psychiatric disorders, including those who have been enslaved. Which might suggest again that this is not a truth, as you said. People may perceive it as a reality, but it may not be ideal to treat it just telling people that that's the truth, that's the reality, when it's in conflict with biology and their hormones and their brain and their biological makeup, because it can have catastrophic results. And how many genders are there? Because now we're talking about non-binary, right?
How many genders are there? I think gender is a continuum. I think part of this is my take on it, right? And this is my own personal opinion and how I've come.
How do you identify, just so I make sure?
Do I
do you just identify as a woman?
I'm a transgender woman.
So you say transgender woman?
I'm comfortable owning the fact that I'm trans. I don't know that any of us has a responsibility to own anything about our own individuality. Like, I don't think anybody needs to walk down the street and say, "Hi, I am a heterosexual man," or "I am a homosexual woman," right? But for me, I'm comfortable being visible, right?
Sure.
I'm lucky that I get to live in Austin and I get to be visible and not suffer too many consequences. Mm-hmm. Now, the reality is, I am a very small sliver of the trans population.
Right.
If I weren't white and professional, right? My murder rate, if I were an African-American transgender woman, I'd be 30 times more likely to be murdered than I am. So
African-American men are much more likely to be murdered than white men too. So a big part of that is
Right.
not
I mean,
necessarily
race
trans.
is real, right? And that's another
By other
huge
black
issue.
people too.
And race is a component of all of our interactions in society.
I
But
think
gender.
it's
okay,
important
so back
on-
to my truth, right?
Yeah.
So like, our gender identity, who we are in our brain from birth, before we're talking about any kind of hormonal replacement, okay?
Yeah.
Is varies across all of us. I'm at peace with. And I honestly think the science will prove that fact. There was a study that was presented this summer in, I forget the researchers, I think were Belgian or Dutch, and it was presented in Spain, Barcelona, like a month ago, that doing imagery studying, right? So
Sure.
functional MRIs on brains of transgender children before HRT. Okay, so there have been some studies that have done in
The
the
most
past
famous
that
study was the Rometty study.
was done with folks who might have been in transition or post-transition.
Yeah.
And this study has been children who identify, at a young age, pre-puberty, many, before any kind of medical intervention, and the studies are showing differences in brain structure that are independent of whether somebody is sort of estrogen dominated or testosterone dominated.
Could you describe brain changes? What do you mean by that?
You mean what the studies were showing?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I haven't actually read the the paper itself. I read the abstract for the information.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because we just jumped around a bit. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you're saying there's a more recent study
Yes.
that showed children pre-transition, let's say a boy who identified as a girl.
1.7 million Filipinos use drugs. The most popular substance being abused in the country is still shabu. This is methamphetamine.
Nagsimula ako nito, 17 ako. Pero wala pa naman kasi ako mapasukan ng trabaho.
Bye.